Afternoon, Justin Fecto. I represent District 86, which is part of Augusta.
Representative Cardone.
Hello, I'm Barbara Cardone. I represent House District 127, part of Bangor.
Representative Corey.
Good afternoon. I'm Patrick Corey. I represent House District 25, which is part of Wyndham.
Representative Cloutier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Kristen Cloutier. I represent House District 60, which is part of Lewiston.
Representative Arata.
Hello, my name is Amy Arata, and I represent House District 65, which includes New Gloucester and part of Poland.
And I believe Representative Fay is joining us. Representative Fay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're having some typical internet connectivity issues here in Raymond today. I'm Representative Jessica Fay, and I represent House District 66, which is parts of the towns of Casco, Poland, and Raymond.
Great. Representative Millett.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I'm Sowen Millett. I represent House District 71, including the citizens of Norway, Sweden, Waterford, and West Paris.
And Representative Millett, do you have Senator Davis with you today in the office?
Not at the moment. He's on his way. He said he might be a few minutes late, so I expect him anytime.
Oh, okay. Thank you for the update. Senator Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Donna Bailey. I proudly represent the residents of Saco, Old Orchard Beach, Hollis, Leamington, and part of Buxton in the Senate.
And my co-chair, Representative Peirce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Teresa Peirce, House Chair of Appropriations and Financial Affairs. I represent District 44, which is the majority of Falmouth.
Great. It looks like Representative Hymanson is just about to join us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Patty Hymanson. I represent House District 4, which is parts of York, Wells, Sanford, and all of Ogunquit.
Great. And we also have our analyst from OFPR, Maureen Dawson, and our clerk, Marianne McMaster. And Chair Sylvester, I will ask you to introduce yourself and your terrific analyst, and then we'll get started.
Thank you very much, Chair Breen, Chair Peirce. I am Mike Sylvester. I'm the representative from District 39, which is the Eastern Peninsula portion of Portland and the islands of Casco Bay. And my analyst is the terrific Steve Langland, who has put together all of this report, and he keeps track of us and keeps us on task.
Great. And Representative Sylvester, you represent some of the islands of Casco Bay, but I also represent some islands in Casco Bay.
So I usually say the fighting islands of Casco Bay in order to differentiate them.
Oh,
but I forgot that you also had some of the islands. So I apologize.
I represent the peaceful islands of Casco Bay.
Sometimes we're the fun-loving islands, occasionally
okay.
we're the peace-loving islands, but yes.
Understood. Well, welcome, and thank you for coming as the delegation from your committee. And I will turn it over to you, Chair Sylvester, so you can walk us through your report and let us know what's important and what you'd like us to hear. You're on mute.
Why, yes, I am. Thank you very much. So the report is fairly simple. The initiatives that were in there, as we all heard together, are not complicated. The only things I think that are really of note in the report are the divided reports. We had divided reports on on allowing authorization for the federal funding of the Unemployment Insurance Office. So these are the temporary positions that are being federally funded. I did not receive an answer as to why exactly the other folks voted, the Republican delegation in my committee voted against that funding, but they did. So that I think is the one piece of note. There's no state fiscal note to that. It's just to authorize the federal funding. And then we had a couple of additions to the general report. We put in 4 positions that were based off of 2 different LDs. One of those positions is to, and I'm going to let my analyst talk a little bit more in detail about these, but one of the programs is because I'm sitting in my car and I did not have all the paperwork that I thought I was going to have in front of me on my phone. So, but one of the programs is a federal program that allows people to employers to get a federal tax rebate on implying a series of categories such as folks who have recently been incarcerated or veterans. And this federal program, it's a great program. Nobody is currently receiving their funding because we have a backlog of almost 45,000 forms that is just waiting for someone from the state to process them. And with the current staffing that we have, which is a half-time position, we do not have we will continue to go into the hole every year in processing these funds. So we put in a position at that for that, which basically keeps us above ground in processing the forms and gets us perhaps, if they work at max capacity and they are all simple, a few hundred ahead every year. And so that seemed to us to be important to make sure at least that we weren't going into the, continuing to go into the log, particularly when this money has already been earned by employers and is just waiting for us to process it. Now they can receive that. There is no time limit on how long, it does not expire. But there have been people who are waiting now 2, 3, some 4 years. The other 3 positions that we put in are in the enforcement office. There are currently 4 people in the entire state who are enforcing all of the labor laws of our state. And it is a similar situation. You are all very familiar with the situation that the unemployment office was in terms of its staffing being at very bare bones. This is the same thing. And it is, and it's been this way for many, I want to say at least, since the 128th in any event, and in the 129th, I looked to put in these positions and I was told that they would be forthcoming in the 130th as a priority, and they did not make it into the budget because of all the all the reasons that you already know. But it seems to me that we can no longer continue to put laws on the books and to ask the DOL to enforce these laws if we don't give them any personnel to do so. And to me, it seems like we're waiting for some tragedy to happen and then discover that that the reason that it happened is that we don't have the folks to go out there and enforce the laws. And right now, as we've heard for the last several years, the office basically is only able to respond to incoming calls and is not really able to go out and do any sort of proactive enforcement of laws. And so that seems to me to be an untenable situation. And so there is an LD that put in 4 positions. We funded 3 positions in our budget. Lastly, I'm sorry, there's 2 more items. One is the funding for the Permanent Commission on Race and Tribal. Those folks put in a budget. It's just roughly about $500,000 a year. And so we put that into, since it is in our budget currently, although we understand it's probably going to be taken out of our budget and perhaps put sent over to you at AFA, we put it into our budget to show that we were supportive, or at least the majority was supportive of funding that commission. And then lastly, those of you who have been on AFA for a little bit will remember that there is a veterans program which allows veterans to buy back into their retirement. If they are state employees, they can use their time served to buy service time in their retirement plan through MEPERS. There is on the books a program that has been unfunded for since I believe 2015. That will allow the state to pay that on their behalf. And so we funded that. It has not been funded for several years. There are 6 people currently that are that have applied for the program that are waiting for there to be funding. And I could switch back and find the number, but I'm sure Steve will have that number at his fingertips if we need it. And we have several bills coming in every year to fund different actions that were combat actions that are not listed by the federal government, but we have yet to be able to fund the folks who are in the ones that are already recognized. And just lastly, I'll say that, as you know, we receive several bills on the main retirement system every year, in order to make this person whole or that group whole, or to bring these folks into the special plan. And due to the constitutional amendment, obviously, all of those have to be paid in the first year that you institute the LD. And so they all come through every year and then and basically go unfunded because of the large price tags. And so we are holding those back and doing a research project to try to figure out how much do each of these cost, what are all the groups that have been affected by retirement changes over the years, and to try to, whoever is sitting in my chair in the 130th to hopefully, or 131st, to hopefully have a plan of how to pay for these going forward. So that is the end of my report, and I'll just ask Steve if he'd like to correct any of the things that I said or add to any of them that I missed.
No, I
Mr.
think
Langley.
I think you pretty much hit the points. I would just say the number for the subsidized military service credit is $298,442.21.
Thank you, Mr. Langley.
Mr. Langland, would you mind repeating that number?
Sure, that's $298,442.21. And that's to fund up to 6 people.
And that's what's in arrears, or that's what is going forward, or that's annual or biannual? What is that?
That's what it would cost for those eligible individuals to buy back their service credit. So it works under a subsidized system. So the state has to allocate some money, and then they're able to purchase their credit at a subsidized rate. And that is the figure that would allow those 6 individuals to sort of become whole.
Okay, thank
you. Yeah, that's a one-time cost.
Okay.
Is that correct, Steve? Yeah.
Great.
That's correct. And just historically, so when AFA had jurisdiction over retirement matters, it's not in all or nothing sort of funding mechanism. So the total that I described would fund up to 6, but in the past, the committee has chosen to go with various amounts depending on available funding and what the committee's desired. So it's, like I said, it's not all or nothing.
Thank you. So we have several questions. The first one is from Representative Cloutier, and then Chair Peirce, and then Representative Fay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Representative Sylvester, you gave a really good, I think, overview of the eligibility specialist position, and there's a good description in the report back. I'm wondering if you can just sort of give us a sense of what those labor and safety inspector positions do.
Yes, I can. So literally, if somebody says you should call the DOL, these are the folks that you are calling. They are spread out throughout the state, and they are fielding your call. They are investigating your complaint. They're doing outreach to employers. They are also the folks who did outreach when we put in new laws that do outreach to be able so that employers can have their questions answered about what the new laws do. It's a pretty comprehensive job, and having talked with many of them, they are as straight out as they can humanly be, just to field the calls that are coming into the office. And even those they have to put into priority, and some of those may not get seen for quite a while because they're lower priority issues. Never mind being able to go out and proactively enforce laws.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Peirce, and then Fay, and then Arata, and then Hymanson.
Thank you, Chair Breen. I had two questions. The analysis that you're doing of all of the retirement systems, I'm trying to find you, there you are. Does that include the military service credit one as well, or is that outside? Is that something different? Were those different things?
Those are different things. The groups, so for example, there is a group of crime lab employees who go out, investigate, but mostly what they do is they look at horrific crimes of children, and they would like to be in the special plan for law enforcement so that they can retire at 25 years instead of, as many of them are in their early 20s. So those are the types of groups that come to us. There's a group that was unfunded, that didn't have merit, that had merit freezes in the early 2010s. And they would like to be made whole. So those are the types of things that we see generally. And so we'd want to, year to year, there's 5 or 6 that come, and then the other groups sort of pop up and then don't pop up again for another couple of years. And so we want to really try to figure out what were all the changes that were made. And I believe we've done that since like 1986 to have the changes, and then ask MEPERS to cost those out. And try to figure out what are the, so we can figure out what are the groups that have priorities for. So for example, there's a group of corrections officers that there was just a line drawn in the sand in the 90s. And if you were on this side of it, you were in the plan and got all your service time. And if you're on that side, you didn't get your service time that you had worked before that time. And so, so they would like to be able to buy back that time, right? And there's a cost to the state. And so those folks, I've watched that list winnow down by about 6 or 8 every year, because corrections officers have a life expectancy somewhere between 52 and 55. And so there's some of those that we want to put up to the front because they seem to have more priority, but we need to to figure out a way to pay them over time, in the general budget.
Is this a bill in your committee or a subcommittee group working on it in your committee?
It's about 20 bills in my committee, and there's no way to prioritize. How do you prioritize this group over that group?
Right.
Or right. And so, except by cost, to say that, yes, you have an egregious concern, but it's too big a group, right? So for example, right now, we just had one about mental health workers. And it's 400 people. It's we might as well mortgage one of the counties to pay for it. And so, but there is a smaller discrete group within that seems to have to be the most active within the group seeking redress. And so, so we may carve out that smaller group, but doesn't mean that larger group doesn't have concerns that we should address. It just means that I know we can't pay for that larger group now. And so is there a way to do it over time? Well, that hopefully will answer.
Okay. And then the military service credit up to 6 members, are there only 6 people eligible?
So you have to both be a veteran in a combat theater and be a state employee. So nobody knows how many it is. Only 6 people have applied, somehow found out about this credit and applied for it, right? And were then told there was no funding, but if funding became available, that they would be, in the order that they applied. And it comes out to that 248,000, I believe. Or
298. Yep.
Good. 298. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Representative Fay, and then Arata, and then Hymanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question goes to the Permanent Commission on Racial, Indigenous, and Maine tribal populations. And I see, and I think I remember a number around 500,000, and it looks like this is there. One of the questions that I had was, do we have a sense of what that funding would go to, what types of salaries we're talking about, how many positions, et cetera, et cetera?
So thank you for the question, and good to see you, Representative Fay. One of the charges of the Permanent Commission is to proactively look at legislation as well as legislation that is brought to them in order to look at it from a racial lens. And so what I understand is that the bulk of the money is for staffing, for analysts to be able to do that, to be able to do research on laws in other states and those sorts of things, to be able to bring back to committees reports that are probably might be outside the scope of an analyst who might be, really good in tax code, but wouldn't have a specialty in those areas in terms of how it might affect traditionally marginalized workers, for example, or along those lines. So that's my understanding.
Okay, follow-up, Madam Chair. I would love to, if there is some sort of proposal for this commission, I would love to see that. I don't know if maybe Mr. Langland could track that down for us. I think that would be really helpful.
There definitely is. And I will have them make sure to send it to Mr. Langland and get it into your hands.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Representative Millett, I do see you waving, so hang on. After Representative Arata, and then Hymanson, and then Millett.
Thank you. I wanted to talk about the, I guess you weren't sure why a minority voted against the federal funding for to continue those positions. And I think I have an idea. I know some people on the labor committee.
I know you do. I bet. Yes.
Yeah. So that's 91 positions. That was a big increase for that department, and we certainly needed it. What we found in appropriations is that when federal funding goes away, it's really hard to just eliminate positions and just, I mean, we are a pretty cold-hearted group, but we don't like setting people out in the streets, without a job. So we tend to turn to funding them with other funds, or maybe general fund money or whatever. But as unemployment is going down, thank goodness, it's probably time to wind down some of these positions and look at, some attrition and some ways to reduce from 91. So perhaps that's something that we can all work on together to sort of just wind down this program, because we don't want to send 91 people out in the streets of Augusta once the federal funding goes away. Does that make sense?
Oh, I understand your point of view for sure. I think one of the things is that these are limited purpose positions, so these are not positions that are permanent positions. Right. Even within this 2-year budget, they are federally funded with no state cost, and so right now, for example, as the funding only goes through July, they're having a very difficult time hiring people because they're only able to say for certain that this position lasts until July 1st. Although they can say, we hope we will get the funding, the federal funding, in order to, keep these positions going for another 2 years. Because one of the things that happened in the 128th, when we moved to the new system, was there was an idea that we would not need people anymore to answer the phones. And in fact, at one point, the phones were done away with entirely. And there was a long negotiation to make sure that we still had a phone service so that people could call in if they weren't able to access the internet. And you know how bad the internet is today. You can imagine, 4 or 5 years ago, how much worse it was. And so, so in terms of the folks, when this pandemic hit, there were really only about 7 people who really knew how to process difficult claims. And most of them were being processed through the unemployment, and then they would follow up, but there was still that 2-week period that people would have before applying on a normal, everyday unemployment. You lost your job, and hearing back from the unemployment office. And so I think that one of the pieces that we're looking at is, over that time, as they go down, how many of those create a system where we're fully staffed, where when Mainers go to apply for their benefits, they're able to get through on the phone. If there's a problem with their internet, they're able to get a quick answer, to make sure that, people who are in desperate situations that this benefit applies to, and that, their employers have paid for, already, that they're able to receive it. And so I think that's the idea of this 2-year term, is to use this federal money to figure out what that number is. I won't pretend to know what it is, you know, and I don't think that the commissioner knows either, but that's the idea of using this federal money now to answer all those really good questions that you had, because I agree, we don't want to throw people out on the streets.
Right, and I don't disagree that those positions were necessary at the time, but certainly that's one of the reasons, though. You know, we don't want to throw people on the street. We don't know that that federal money is going to continue, and how ironic it would be if we laid off 91 people at the, you know, from the Department of Labor because we don't have funding, you know, 2 years from now. So I think talking about winding it down might be productive.
That would be an unfortunate situation were such a thing to occur. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for the
Thank
question.
you.
Good to see you.
You too.
So now I'm a little confused because Representative Hymanson put her hand down. Does that mean you got your question answered? Okay, great. Representative Millet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Chair Sylvester. And I think my questions are going to be focused more toward Mr. Langland. I would like a summary of the new initiatives that's broken down by an LD connection, if any, with blippies assigned to them, and also the committee breakdown on votes. Some of it's clear, some of it's not. Representative Fay asked about the piece that led to the Permanent Commission on Racial, Indigenous, and Tribal Populations. So I'd kind of like to see all of them and get a figure assigned to each of them by year of the general fund impact, so we could look at them and understand what the cost of your proposals that have majority support would be on top of the governor's proposals. And that, I guess, covers areas that there are some blippies for the 3 wage an hour positions, but I don't find any for any of the other new initiatives. Maybe I overlooked them, but I would like that summary if Steve could break it down by LD connection, general fund impact with blippy language, and also the committee spread in terms of voting. And beyond that, Madam Chair, if there are other questions about the overview from Chair Sylvester, I would defer to them. It would be nice if we had a minute or two to go page by page with Mr. Langland, if he has the material in front of him and Chair Sylvester does not, because I have some questions like Representative Arata raised about the duration of the federal money. There are a lot of references to one time and some sporadic use of federal money. It'd be nice to know when that money will end and how certain it is for even the short term. So those are questions I could defer to Steve, if that's okay with you, Madam Chair.
Sure, that would be fine with me. Chair Sylvester, is that okay with you?
That is absolutely fine. And some of those questions we may need to get from the commissioner in terms of you know, their expectations and latest news about money coming forward. But
Sure.
Mr. Langland, if you would answer any of those questions that you have at the ready.
Sure.
I think Representative Millet, you wanted to just walk through the report with Mr. Langland, is that correct?
I did, assuming he is clear on my request for the overview with blippies of the general fund increases, because that's something I don't expect today. Obviously, it would be nice to have in front of us when we ultimately work this report. But the other questions, if you're ready for them, I can go through them page by page, and I suspect he has the answers in his own head right now.
Right, and if not, we can get them.
Okay.
Great.
I think I found the 3 areas that the committee split on in terms of federal positions. Representative Arata referred to them. They're on pages 15, 16, and 17. But starting on page 9, I have a question at the bottom of the administration labor issue. It does indicate that increased federal funding results in this reduction of general fund, increase of federal funds. I just wanted to know references reducing the general fund percentage because of the department's federally approved indirect cost rate is going up. I just had a question there. Will that be ongoing or is that biennium specific? So that's an easy one, I think, Steve, if you understand where I'm coming from. I'm just reading the justification statements and trying to get an answer in my own head. Will these continue? And if not, when will we likely see a termination of the federal money?
So I don't want to disappoint you, but I'm probably actually not the best person to answer these questions. Our committee fiscal analyst, who is not here today, would probably actually be the better person to answer those. She worked with the committee as much as I did on going through each of these initiatives. If there are certain questions that you have specifically, other than the broad overview, I'm happy to work with our fiscal analyst and get those answers back to you. We did have the Commissioner of Labor as well as the Deputy Commissioner of Labor at our work sessions, and I primarily relied upon their expertise in describing these initiatives and going over these initiatives with the committee. So I'm probably not in the best position to answer your questions, but I certainly know people who can. And if you want me to reach out with them and work with them and report back to you, I'm certainly happy to do that.
I'll defer to the chairman, Chair Breen. I assume you're talking about Colleen McCarthy-Reed maybe being the source of the answers?
Our fiscal analyst, Rachel Tremblay, who works.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Well, Chair Breen, would you rather I do this offline later, or would Maureen or Rachel, if she's listening in, be able to capture the questions? They're pretty brief, and I can do them very quickly, page by page. What's the easier way to get those answers down the road?
Well, Maureen has just appeared, and which makes me think she has something constructive to say, which is usually the case. So let's hear from Maureen.
I'll try. On the initiatives and questions, you're talking page 9 of the report back, are you not, Representative?
Yes, correct.
Those were coded as ongoing. So it's and it's about the state cap. Now, as you know, that is redone, pretty much every biennium. So there's no guarantee that that will be the case for the future, but as it stands, it was coded as ongoing, so that is the reduction to general fund would be in the baseline for the next biennium after this one.
Thank you. That answers that one. And Madam Chair, may I proceed? Okay, on page.
Yeah, your questions are usually enlightening for everybody, so I would encourage you to proceed.
I'm sure you're hanging on every word, but they're important, at least for me, to look down the road. Maureen, on page 11, we do have a increased contract for visually impaired position, increase in other special revenue, but it does reflect that the Department of Education is funding a major portion of that position. As long as we could be cross-referenced with the DOE line that funds the remainder of that position, that's more for internal AFA work down the road.
We'll look for that. It's quite possible that that is being absorbed within existing resources, so you would not see an initiative in DOE, but we will look into what account it would come out of.
Okay. Then I move to page 15, the item in the middle, the Employment Security Services, the federal money. It does talk about these positions were established in accordance with the pandemic and continuing these positions through the 22-23 biennium. Is that a clear reference that this is limited to the upcoming biennium and not the out biennium?
It is, and you'll notice there is no head count associated with this, so you will not see that in future baselines. I also want to point out that that initiative, as well as the one on page 14, reference 1930, reference 1931, 1932, and 1933 were included in LD 715.
Okay.
So they are no longer in play.
Good. Thank you for that. The next one I had was the question at the top of page 17. where we're talking about a $75 million increase from the trust fund allocation. Did the committee get, or could you, through Rachel, provide us with a picture on the status of the Employment Security Trust Fund? Clearly, we're talking about an allocation, but it's a huge number, and it would be nice to know and satisfy all of us as to whether or not that's a stable funding going forward. We were told back in the summer that some CARES money went to the trust fund to avoid a rate increase for employers. But you know, the question jumps out: is this a stable fund going forward, and will it obviate any need for an employer rate increase? Okay.
I'll have to get back to you, definitely get back to you on that one.
And at the bottom of that page 17, another one of those 8.5 reports, it references the funding for the administration of unemployment, which was funded in a 2019 chapter. And I guess my question again, it says receipt of the funding will begin in April of 21. And that means it would affect both years, but for some reason, only the same dollar amount each year. And I guess the question is this an ongoing allocation of OSR money?
Should be able to answer that in a minute. That was also coded as ongoing. So from OFBR's point of view, then that allocation would stay in the baseline. But as you know, allocations are there if the funding exists. So, which in this case, it's quite likely because it's a very large OSR account.
Got it. Thank you. My next question is, Maureen, and you're doing a great job as usual. On page 27, there are references to a proposed reorg and a proposed reclass. And we don't normally get hung up on these, but do you know, or could you find the status of whether they've been approved? They do have some date references back in one case to August of 19. Obviously, I'm not really torn up about these if they are already approved and we owe the money.
I believe, Representative, these are management initiated, so that they would not be retroactive.
Okay.
And can only happen if it's approved by the funding is approved by the legislature. But we can certainly look at or find out what the status of the human resources, how they analyzed it.
That would be the question, really. Are they approved or likely to be approved in the short term? And that is the sum of those questions in labor. I had a question at the top of page 34. It references in the justification an additional one-time federal funding. And again, the question is, what's the likelihood of that continuing? That again is part of the state cap position. So you may have already answered that one. And the same question on the top of
that one, as you can see, that one is only in we're talking reference 1978 and 1979.
1976.
Oh, 1976. Oh, I'm sorry, I was on the wrong page. Yeah.
Well, the justification is at the top of the next page, Maureen. That was the only question. It seems to benefit the general fund, but my question is, how long does that likely to continue?
All right. We'll have to get back to you on that one, I think. My guess is that it does not say one time, so it has been coded as ongoing.
Okay.
But, again, the same kind of thing. It would depend, and they would have to get a new initiative to undo it in the future by him, but we'll double check it.
And the next one is page 35 at the top, the reference to second year only in the biennium. It's another one of those federal fund transfers or reductions, actually. So it's nice to know it is a reduction in the general fund. But if it's second year only, is that presumed that it ends at the end of 23?
It would appear from the justification statement that that should be one time, but there's nothing in the Blippy itself that says one time, which is generally the part that we look at when we code. So I will double check on that one.
Great. And my last one and within labor is on page 40. The source of funding for the Kim Wallace Adaptive Equipment Program, which sounds like a good program. We're allocating $2 million a year from OSR. Is that an ongoing source?
Yeah, we'll look into that. My guess is yes, but of course the level of availability could fluctuate, but we will get you some detail on the sources of that fund.
Okay, I'm down to my last question, and you've done a great job, Maureen, and I won't bore you, but on the language page 49, it does indicate that KKK is in by 8 to 5. I think I would read from the early entry statement that triple L is similarly included. I'm just wondering if the committee made any selective determinations or whether main PERS weighed in on the cost of those in modifying titles of positions that would come in under the special plan. I'm looking for main PERS positions on those two.
You can find the Part A initiatives are both under Department of Public Safety, under Consolidated Emergency Communications, and Fire Marshal Office of. So there are two Part A initiatives that are appropriating funds or allocating funds for that, and they have been vetted by main PERS. So the amounts that you see in those two Part A initiatives are what main PERS has estimated to be the needed funding.
Are both KKK and LLL under the jurisdiction of Labor and Housing?
The language parts are under the jurisdiction. The funding parts are under the jurisdiction of the committee that would have to fund them. So that's why you see them kind of split up. It is a little confusing.
So both of them apparently were 8 to 5 votes to move them in.
That I would imagine that Stephen would, yeah, he's nodding his head.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Maureen, and thank you, Madam Chair. I'm done. My real interest is in that general fund increase section that I asked for in the beginning. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Representative Millet. It looks like Rachel Tremblay has joined us too, so I feel confident we'll get your answer soon. Any further questions, either of Chair Sylvester or our Labor and Housing Analyst, Mr. Langland? All right. Well, that concludes our session for today. And I thank everybody for joining us. And we will see you again for report back from Health and Human Services on Thursday afternoon.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, committee.
Thank you, Chair Sylvester. Any questions from any AFA members before we sign off?